Frosted dawn at Rapid City's bus depot. A shivering boy clutches a cold key marked C12. I raise my lantern. Why is he hiding in the wash bay? The wash bay stank of detergent and diesel, a cold breath rolling through the open service door. My lantern haloed the steam like a ghost. On the wet concrete, tucked behind a blue drum of degreaser, a kid with a buzzed haircut hugged his knees so tight his knuckles were white. He flinched at my boots and pressed a key to his chest as if pressing it through. "Hey," I said, quiet. "Dean Hartley, Sheriff's Office." I tipped the lantern down so it wouldn't blind him. "You okay, bud?" He didn't answer. His lips were chapped and split, the edges stained purple from the cold. We were at the Rapid Transit Depot on East Boulevard. Dawn hadn't broken yet, and the wash bay lights flickered, old fluorescents buzzing like hornets. Every bus in the yard wore a frost shell. Out beyond the bay, a snowplow scraped the street with the sound of a giant zipper. "Your name's Miles?" I asked. A beat. A tiny nod. He couldn't have been more than 9. His coat was 2 sizes too small, sleeves riding above his wrists, and the cuffs were dark with grime. "You're not in trouble." I crouched, feeling the concrete suck the heat out of my knees. "You're shivering. Can I get you someplace warm?" His eyes locked on the lantern, not me. The light reflected in them, trembling. He kept the key clamped in his fist. The stamped letters caught the light. C12. "You want me to put the light down?" I asked, lowering it until its glow crawled across the wet floor. He flinched less. "All right, I'll put it right here." The radio on my shoulder hissed. "Unit 12, status check." "Unit 12, I'm 10-6 with a juvenile at Rapid Transit," I said, still soft. "Medical cold exposure. Send EMS to the service bay." "Copy, Unit 12, EMS en route." I shrugged out of my jacket and set it nearby, close enough he could reach. He didn't. He slid the key toward his belly again, like a turtle retreating. "C12, I said. "Important key?" He swallowed. His gaze ticked up to my face and down again, fast. He made a small sound that wasn't a word. "Okay," I said, matching his pace. "We'll go slow." The bay door rattled in the wind. A bus horn somewhere bleated, short and helpless. The lantern threw our shadows long across the concrete, 2 figures bending toward each other but not yet touching. I pulled a hand warmer from my pocket. "You know these?" "They get warm when you shake 'em." I tore it open, shook it until the powder turned alive and slid it closer. He watched, but didn't move. Then, cautiously, 2 fingers stretched, hooked the edge, and dragged it in. He cupped it against the back of his other hand, the one with the key. "You got a last name, Miles?" I asked. He licked his lips. "Keaton," he whispered, the syllables feather-thin. "Got it," I said, my heart easing a fraction because a name is a bridge. "Miles Keaton. How did you end up here?" He tipped his head toward the back wall, toward a steel door with a stenciled sign. Janitorial. Keep locked. The padlock hung open. The door stood a thumb's width ajar. The fluorescent above it flickered harder, then steadied to a color like winter milk. "Were you in there?" I asked. He sucked on his cracked bottom lip. Didn't answer. "Did someone put you in there?" His shoulders rose. He looked at the lantern again and squinted, as if the glare on white tile lived behind his eyelids. He hugged the key tighter. "Don't. Shut," he breathed. "Don't shut the lights." I eased my hand toward the lantern and widened the beam. Gentler, so the edges went soft. "We'll keep them on," I said. "Promise." Footsteps tapped across the concrete. Jared, the night maintenance guy, stood at the edge of the bay in an orange hoodie, hands up like I might cuff him for walking. Officer? You find the kid?" I gave him a look that said, "Stay back." He did. "He's been around since last week," Jared said, voice low. "We thought he was with a driver, or one of the cleaning contractors. He, likes to tuck behind the drums." "Who has keys to the janitor closet?" I asked. "Supervisors, and Vernon, procurement. He keeps spares in the office. Why?" I glanced at the key in Miles's hand, marked C12. What's C12? Cage 12, Jared said. In the parts room. Hardware cages. That's not a janitor key. Who needs access to cage 12? Purchasing. Mechanics sometimes. But that's mostly Vernon's kingdom. Miles pressed the hand warmer harder. The lantern's glow reflected from a wet streak on the floor where someone had dragged a mop recently. A box of ramen sat open on a dolly near the janitor door, the cheap kind with orange packets. A single crushed packet lay on the floor, a pinch of dried noodles sprinkled like straw. Beside it, a wire grid bulletin board he'd leaned against the wall, unmounted. On the top row, someone had clipped a laminated tag. C12, Thurs. EMS is 2 minutes out, the radio said. Copy. I looked at Jared. We need a warm room. Break room, he said. Heater works if you don't stare at it. I nodded. Miles, I said, easing closer, I want to take you to a warm room. Nurse is coming to check your hands. Is that okay? His breath fogged, quick and shallow. He nodded the smallest nod. Can I carry you, or do you want to walk? Miles's eyes skittered toward the doorway. A bus backfired outside, and he flinched so hard the hand warmer tumbled, skittering over wet concrete. He went after it, hands slapping down, one hand still clutching the key, and the volt of cold from the floor shocked a small gasp out of him. I caught his elbow, not gripping, just bracing. Hey, easy. He let me help him up. He was light as a bundle of sticks. I wrapped my jacket around his shoulders, and he let me. The key never left his fist. It looked too heavy for a 9-year-old hand. In the break room, the vending machine buzzed under a corkboard of crew schedules and MSDS sheets. The heater clicked. Jared found a clean mug and hot water, handed it to me. I cupped Miles's hands around the ceramic. Just hold it, I said. Don't drink yet. Warm first. The EMS crew filed in, 2 medics with wind-pink faces. What do we got? The taller one asked, eyes already scanning for danger signs. Cold exposure, I said, keeping my voice level. Frost nip on fingers, maybe toes. Light sensitivity anxiety around fluorescence. He's been in the wash bay and maybe the janitor closet. Name's Miles Keaton. They did their rhythm. Pulse, pupils, skin temp. The shorter medic flicked a penlight, and Miles jerked away. Hey, bud, I'll go slow, she said, angling it past him instead of at him. We'll keep the room lights as is. Don't shut, Miles whispered again. We'll keep them on, I said. They swaddled his hands in gauze, gentle and clinical, and got warm air blowing into his jacket. He should go to Monument, the tall medic said. Children's wing can handle the rest. I nodded. I'll ride. While they loaded him onto the gurney, I stepped back into the wash bay. The lantern sat where I'd left it, warming a circle of wet concrete. I swung the janitor door fully open. Inside, a small utility sink, steel shelves with bleach, mop heads, a bucket. The fluorescent tube was buzzing, and at the back, above the sink, a faint outline where tape had been peeled away. On the floor, an empty ramen cup lay crushed, neat as evidence. In the corner, a knit cap, damp and small, embroidered with a cheap patch that had come half off. A cartoon rocket, its tail a threadbare streak. On the underside of the sink, in marker, someone had written shaky, C12 Thurs. Jared hovered at the threshold. We got a janitor, Luis, who keeps ramen in here, he offered. Sometimes he shares. Who told you the kid was with a driver? I asked. Vernon said someone was evaluating. I don't know. Evaluating what? Some program. He said not to mess with it. Said he had paperwork. The lantern's light touched the wire grid board leaning on the wall again. C12, Thurs. The same words, twice, different hands. I took a photo with my phone. The flash popped and bounced off tile. Miles in a closet with ramen and a note about a cage. Fluorescence buzzing like a punishment. Someone saying he was part of an evaluation. I followed the gurney out into the blue hour. Snow squealed under the wheels. The ambulance doors yawned, and the medic tucked a blanket around Miles up to his chin. The key still peeped from his fist, dull and stubborn. I climbed in. The driver closed us in, and for a second the world was all machine hum and breath. Miles stared at the ceiling. "You work here?" he asked in a barely there voice. "At the sheriff's office," I said. "I'm going to stay with you." He turned his head, slow as an old hinge. "Don't let them move me." "Who?" I asked. His eyelids fluttered. The words snagged on his breath. "The buying man," he whispered, and the key tapped once against the metal rail, a quiet, unmistakable sound. The ambulance lurched forward, siren low, and I felt the story spool tighter inside my chest. I took out my notebook and wrote the words down. Buying man, C12, Thurs, janitor door. And then I looked at the key in his hand and asked the smallest question I could ask without breaking whatever fragile trust hung between us. "What does C12 open, Miles?" His eyes closed. For a second I thought he'd drifted. Then he pressed the key to the blanket over his heart, as if arranging it on some map of himself, and he breathed, "The cage where they keep things, where they keep us, waiting." The medic met my eyes, unsettled. The ambulance rocked through a plowed intersection. We were 3 minutes from Monument, and whatever this was had just stepped out of the shadows. Monument's ambulance bay doors hissed open and slapped the cold out of the air. We rolled straight into a corridor that smelled like antiseptic and oranges, the kind of clean that burns a little. The fluorescent panels overhead were steady, not the old buzzsaw kind, and I felt Miles loosen a thread. He still kept the key on his chest, fist locked around C12 like he was the last guard on a post. "I'll keep the lights on," I told him as the medic passed off to intake. "No one's closing you in." A nurse in the navy scrubs met us at a trot. 30-something, hair pulled into a low twist, badge read Renee Collins, RN. Her eyes went straight to Miles's hands and then to his pupils, and when someone reached for the light dimmer, she said gently but firmly, "Leave the overheads alone. Flicker agitates some kids. We'll use a lamp." She slid a rolling exam light in beside the gurney and angled its hood so the beam fell soft. I recognized the kind of person who works the night shift on purpose. Voice pitched just below the din, hands that move without telegraphing fear. "Hey, Miles," she said, kneeling to his level. "I'm Renee. We're going to warm your hands up, check your toes, and keep you safe. Sound okay?" He stared at the lamp, not her. "Don't shut," he whispered. "We won't," she said. "You're the boss of the light tonight." The pediatric attending did a rinse of questions with me. Time down, exposure, any trauma, and then gave orders. Passive rewarming with warm blankets and warm drinks, avoid rubbing frostnip areas, monitor vitals, glucose check, watch for afterdrop. They fitted a warming hat, tucked warm packs into the crooks of his arms, and wound soft gauze around the rawest knuckles. One of the techs taped a folded towel over a seam in the overhead panel so, if it decided to flicker, it would do it gently. "Any allergies?" Renee asked. Pen paused. Miles swallowed. "Soap," he said, tiny, and I felt that land like a dumbbell in the room we all pretended wasn't there. You only answer soap if someone's introduced it to you like a threat. I stayed on the chair by the rail, notebook open, uniform jacket damp from where it had been around him. Dispatch pinged my shoulder mic. "Unit 12, be advised, no active missing persons in system for a Miles Keaton. Do you want us to broaden?" "Yeah," I said. "Check school records. Look for an Evelyn Keaton in Pennington County. Any contact in last 60 days. "Copy." Renee glanced at the key when she took his temperature. "Do you need me to bag that?" she asked me low. "Not yet," I said. "If he lets it leave his hand, I'll photo, bag, and tag. Until then, I want him to keep whatever anchor he's got." She nodded, like that matched something she'd learned that isn't written in any policy. A social worker from the hospital's night team came in. Short, silver bob, calm shoes. "I'm Judy," she said. "Dean, do you intend to place protective custody?" "In the morning I'm going to try to find Mom," I said. "For now, yeah. I'm initiating an emergency protective hold. He's not leaving this hospital except to a medically appropriate placement, and not without a court say-so. You can note me as the point." Judy wrote, "We'll shelter him here. I'll notify CPS so they're looped without triggering unnecessary movement at this hour." Renee's phone buzzed in her pocket. She glanced, slid it back. "You said Keaton?" she asked me, careful. "Yeah." She stood, smoothed her scrub top with both hands in a way that looked like nerves she didn't want to show. "Can you step into the charting alcove for a second?" I looked at Miles. "Be right there, buddy." He tilted his face just enough that I could see the reflection of the lamp in his pupils, a tiny moon in a winter sky. In the alcove, Renee opened a cabinet above the computer where they keep spare pens and tongue depressors and, in this case, a thin manila envelope with 3 staples in the top. She set it down like something that might crumble. "Last week," she said, voice low, "a woman came by the children's wing asking for me. Said her name was Evelyn Keaton. She had a little boy with her, but he wouldn't come inside. She asked if she could use the bathroom. I walked her halfway and her hands were shaking. When she came out, she asked me if I could hold on to a copy of something. 'If anything happens to me,' she said, 'give this to a cop named Hartley or anyone with a badge who actually listens.' I asked why me, and she said because I look like someone who doesn't fold." "What was the copy?" I asked. Renee slid the papers from the envelope. On top, a black and white photocopy of a credit card receipt. Merchant, Rapid Transit Parts Depot, Rapid City, SD. Beneath it, a printout of a fuel card statement with dates highlighted, a handwritten note in the margin, block letters, and a tight hand. C12, Thurs. Buying man, Hal. The H pressed hard enough the pen bled. My mouth went dry. "She used the name Hal?" Renee pointed at the receipt signature. It wasn't a signature, just scrawled initials. HV. "And this?" she said, pulling the last thing free, a taped-together slip of paper from a corkboard, the holes still torn at the top. You could make out the ghost of previous pushpin scars. C12. Thurs, the same hand as the janitor closet. Someone had ripped it off and then taped it back to make a record. "Why didn't you call then?" I asked, not accusatory, truly wanting to understand. "I told her to wait with me so I could get an officer," Renee said, pain in her face she didn't bother to hide. "She said if I called anyone, whoever she was afraid of would know in hours. She wanted it in a place he couldn't search. Hospitals lose things all the time," she said, and she laughed in this tired way and left. I let out a breath I hadn't realized I'd locked. Renee's little alcove hummed with the secret of it. Through the doorway, I could see Miles's fingers under their gauze cocoon, minutely flexing at the sound of the lights. He looked like a kid who'd been taught to map a room by its hum. "Do you have a number for Evelyn?" I asked. "On the back," Renee said, flipping the fuel statement over. "A number, an address on East North Street, and under that, one more line in block print. If he says evaluation, call Wyatt Carrington." I blinked. "The ranch guy?" She nodded. "The billboard outside Box Elder. Carrington Cattle. We feed the plains." "That Wyatt Carrington?" "Yeah," I said. "That one." I took photos of everything in place before I touched it. The copier's artifacting made it all look like a nightmare happening under snow, grainy, almost believable. I slid the envelope back and looked Renee in the eye. "You kept this safe." She shrugged, but it wasn't nothing. "She asked me to." My radio popped again. "Dispatch. Unit 12. We have a DMV hit on Evelyn Keaton, 32. Rapid City address matches the note. Employer listed as Rapid Transit. Cleaning contractor. Last wage reported 3 weeks ago. No new activity." "Send a car," I said. "Officer initiated welfare. No lights, patient approach. If no response, hold outside." "Copy." When I returned to the room, Miles's cheeks held a little more color. He had a sip of warm apple juice and made a face that might have been almost a smile, the quick flash of a kid remembering that warm things aren't always traps. "Do you know a man named Hal?" I asked, as gently as my voice could go. His eyes went back to the lamp. His throat worked. He buys, he said. He comes when they say testing. Evaluation. If you don't talk right, they say it's not your day. He swallowed hard enough I heard it. Then they shut the lights and leave you. Renee shifted her weight, the only sign she'd heard something worth throwing a chair over. I wrote it down. Not later. Now, in ink. Buys, evaluation, lights. Judy reappeared. I've put the protective hold in the chart and flagged it so any transfer request pings us and you, she said. I'll be down the hall. Good, I said. It took exactly 7 minutes for the first ping. Renee's station phone lit up with a number labeled City Admin. She answered in her best neutral voice, listened, eyes lifting to mine. She covered the receiver. They're asking if the child is medically stable for transfer to the county assessment center, she said. They say they'll send a courier with paperwork and a transport within the hour. Who's they? I asked. She lifted her hand, put the receiver back to her ear. And may I say, who is calling? A beat. Her eyes flicked more sharply to mine. Yes, Mr. Vernon. We have him safe, and the officer of record would like to speak with you. She held the phone out. I took it. Hartley, I said. The voice on the other end was smooth in the way of men who sign for deliveries with other people's names. Officer Hartley, he said. Hal Vernon, procurement. Per the city's protocol for juvenile protective evaluation, the child should be transferred to our contracted facility. I have a judge's administrative order you'll want to see. Fax it, I said. And nobody's moving any child until I verify it with an on-call judge. A pause. When he spoke again, the smooth had an edge. It's 2 a.m, Deputy. Don't make this complicated. That's Sheriff's deputy, I said. And complicated is my hobby. I hung up before he could choose a voice to persuade me. A minute later, the unit fax in the alcove began to cough paper, the kind that curls hot into a tray. Renee grabbed it before it could sail to the floor. At the top, Order for Temporary Juvenile Placement. The date line had a cross-out and a correction. The judge's stamped name looked lifted from a file. The signature was a bad trace, the kind a scanner makes guilty. I took photos. I called dispatch and asked for the on-call judge's number, then called her. A tired woman's voice answered on the third ring. When I read the order to her, she blew out a tired breath that turned sharp at the edges. I did not sign that, she said. Do not release that child to anyone but your department pending my personal review at 8 a.m. I'll call the hospital administrator myself. Thank you, Judge. I ended the call and leaned into the doorframe, letting the weight of it flow through me just long enough to reset my center. Renee stood with the fake order in her hand like it was a snake she might bag. Are they coming? She asked. The elevator down the hall pinged open. A man in a wool coat stepped out, shoulders squared the way only someone used to walking into rooms with a pen can manage. A city badge swung on a lanyard. The name read Hal Vernon. Miles's fingers tightened around the key, and the little stamped C12 flashed once in the lamplight. Hal Vernon's shoes clicked like a metronome as he came down the pediatric corridor. Wool coat open, a folder tucked against his ribs like a baton. Hospital security ghosted him at a polite distance, 2 guys in navy blazers who looked like they'd rather de-escalate than tackle. Renee stepped a half-step closer to Miles's door. I moved to fill the doorway. Mr. Vernon, I said, badge plain on my chest. You can hand the original of that order to me. He offered a smile I'd seen on men who ask for your pen before stealing your watch. Deputy Hartley, I presume. City procurement. We have a contract with the county assessment center. The child is scheduled for evaluation this morning. Transport's en route. Your order's counterfeit. I held up the fax. On call, Judge just told me she didn't sign it. You brought a forged court document into a hospital. His smile ticked, then stabilized. That's a misunderstanding. The clerk must have... Stop, I said. Don't manufacture people to hide behind. Where's the original? He set the folder on a hall-side table. The man's coat smelled like diesel and hotel cologne. Through the narrow window behind me, I could see Miles leaning into the lamp's warm circle, C12 still buried in his gauze-cocooned hand. The stamped letters flashed when he flexed. He kept his face angled toward the light like it was the only honest thing in the room. Vernon snapped the folder open. Inside, a crisp copy of the same order with the same wrong date and traced signature, plus a typed transfer authorization with a line for a courier. At the bottom, a block stamp. Evaluation Protocol 14. "Where'd you get the stamp?" I asked. He didn't blink. "Sheriff, we follow protocol. Don't politicize a placement decision. This boy was found at municipal property, likely from unstable housing. He needs screening. The assessment center is designed for that. Don't make this adversarial." "Name the judge," I said. He glanced down, buying time. "The order speaks for itself." "Then it can speak from an evidence bag," I said. "You're not taking him. That's not your decision to make." He tilted his head toward the nurses. "Medical staff lack the authority to deny a lawful transfer. The city will hold them responsible if a bed is blocked when—" Renee didn't flinch. "Our policy is clear. No transfer without valid order and medical okay. He's here on a protective hold. He stays until that hold is lifted." Vernon's eyes slid to her name badge. "Nurse Collins, you're out of your lane." She didn't answer. She did one small thing instead. She shifted her body so that anyone stepping through the door would have to brush past her. Little cut of defiance. It counted. My shoulder mic chirped. "Unit 12, copies on your request. Patrol is at rapid transit. Purchasing office door is locked. No answer inside." "Hold the door," I said. "Don't go in without me. Have them secure the parts room. I need photos of all cage tags and the keyboard." "Copy." Vernon's eyes cut to the mic. "There's no need for theatrics," he said, soft, like we were co-conspirators. "We all want what's best for the child." "Who's the courier?" I asked. He drew his hands up, palms out. "That's logistics." "Name." "You can speak to city council in the morning." "You can give me a name now, or you can meet my body cam." I tapped the camera mounted at my chest. Its red LED blinked steady. "If I later discover you tried to extract a child on a forged order, that recording will play badly." For the first time, he looked small. Not because I threatened him. I hadn't. I was a man with a pen and a light in a hallway, but because the corridor light took all the flattering angles away. He sighed. "My assistant, Brooke. She organizes transfers. She'll have—" "Last name?" He hesitated. "Ames." "Phone?" "On my work cell," he said. "Take it out," I said. He did. I photographed the screen in his hand, numbers, timestamps, a text thread pinned up top. "Brooke Ames, with eval pickup 0215. And his reply, "Yes, H Wing. Ask for Collins. Judge assigned." "Brooke's on her way?" I asked. Vernon licked his bottom lip. "She's outside." Renee's eyes jumped, not to the lobby, but to the elevator half a corridor away. It pinged, doors sliding open. A woman with a parka and a clipboard stepped out, looking like any night shift courier who moves specimens and signed for packages between floors. She didn't look like a kidnapper. That was the point. I lifted a hand. "Brooke Ames?" She froze, then tried a professional smile. "Yes?" "Please wait right there," I said. "Show hospital security your identification." She handed her badge over. Security peered, then looked at me. One of them repositioned a step between Brooke and the door to H Wing. The other set his stance. "Brooke, who told you to come?" I asked. She glanced at Vernon. He arranged his features into something like affronted surprise. "Deputy Hartley is overreaching," he said. "Brooke, don't answer questions without counsel." "Brooke," I said, "you can either participate in a voluntary conversation, or we can detain you as part of an investigation into a forged court order. Your choice." Her face drained. "He sent me a PDF. He said it was signed. He said the boy was disruptive, that the hospital wanted him moved." She looked down at her clipboard and then up again, as if in that glance she'd finally seen the kid behind the paper. "I didn't know," she whispered. "Thank you," I said. "Security, please escort Ms. Ames to the family room. Offer her some water." Then, to Brooke, quietly, "You can text your boss and say there's been a delay. Don't make any other calls." Vernon's mouth thinned. "You're making a mess," he said under his breath. "Maybe the mess existed," I said. "I'm just turning on the light." Behind me, Miles stirred at the word. "Light," he murmured. "Don't shut." "We won't," Renee said, the phrase becoming a braid between us. My phone vibrated, a text from patrol at the depot. A photo filled the screen. A wire grid board mounted now, push pins for keys with tags. One tag read C12, Thurs. The pin was empty. Another photo. A janitor closet door, open. The outline of tape over a sink. The crushed ramen cup in the corner. "Seal that room," I texted back. "No one in or out." I called dispatch, kept my voice even. "Start a log on Hal Vernon. If he leaves, note his direction. I want a warrant for his work email and phone. Emphasis on communications referencing evaluation, assessment, C12, and fuel card expenditures. Notify the on-call SA that we have a forged order presented. Copy." Vernon shifted his weight like he might pivot and walk. I stepped to block, no hands, just presence. "You're staying," I said. "You showed up with a forged document and a plan to move a child. That's enough for reasonable suspicion. You're not under arrest, yet, but we're going to talk." "Without counsel?" he sneered. "You can call counsel." I lifted my phone. "One more note. If anyone says the word evaluation around this child again, you can add witness intimidation to your problems." His eyes cut toward the door window. The lamplight caught the gold flecks in Miles's irises. The kid's grip on the key had turned from white knuckle to steady press, the way a person presses a coin in their palm for luck. The stamped letters imprinted a faint red crescent on his gauze. Renee slipped me a look and a small nod toward the envelope in her alcove, the note scrawled on the back. "If he says evaluation, call Wyatt Carrington." I had told myself it could wait until morning. It didn't feel like that anymore. I stepped into the alcove, pulled the paper, dialed the number with my thumb, felt a ridiculous part of me braced for a voicemail. It rang once, twice. On the third ring, a voice answered, rough with sleep, but clear. "Carrington?" "Mr. Carrington," I said. "This is Deputy Dean Hartley, Pennington County. I was told to call you if anyone tried to move a child under the word evaluation." Silence. Not the confused kind. The kind that listens while a mind turns over and chooses shape. "What's the child's name?" he asked. "Miles Keaton." "What hospital?" "Monument Children's, H Wing." "I'm on my way," he said, "and I'm calling my attorney in Rapid. You'll have outside counsel at your elbow in 20 minutes. He exhaled, hard, like a man coughing up an old promise. "Deputy Hartley, don't let that boy out of your sight." "I won't," I said. I ended the call and felt the hallway sharpen, every line bright. Out past security, Vernon paced a slow, controlled line like a caged animal who hasn't decided which corner to try. Renee glanced toward me. "Well?" "He's coming," I said. The elevator pinged again. This time it was only a phlebotomist with a cart of tubes and labels humming under her breath, a normal hour intruding on a night that didn't want to be. But over the hospital intercom, a coded announcement crackled. Security to the main lobby, and my radio hissed with patrol. "Unit 12, be advised. Unknown male approached the depot officers and then ran. Lost him between the wash bay and the parts room. We have fresh footprints. Also, the keyboard's missing one more tag now. C11. Copy?" I copied, looked back through the window at the boy on the bed, his fist around C12 as if around the idea that not everything would be taken. And, in the small silence after the announcement, Vernon lifted his head and said to no one and to me, You have no idea what that opens. Vernon's last line hung in the corridor like a draft. You have no idea what that opens. I'll get there, I said, steady. In the meantime, you're not opening anything. Renee adjusted Miles's lamp a thumb toward warm and tapped his forehead with the back of her knuckle, a nurse's way of checking heat without making a deal of it. His fingers flexed under gauze. The key thumped once against the blanket, tiny and stubborn. Hospital security kept Brooke in a family room with a paper cup of water and a magazine no one reads. One guard stayed posted at our doorway, shoulders relaxed but ready. The 6 a.m. hum hadn't started yet. The pediatric wing was the hush between night and breakfast. Unit 12, dispatch crackled. SA's office is awake. Assistant State's Attorney Kim is 10 out. On call, judge confirmed she's issuing a written no-transfer order to the hospital administrator. Copy, I said. Log it and print a copy to H Nurse's station. Renee's station printer started its slow chug, spitting a header page. She plucked the order as soon as it cleared the teeth, an emergency directive, signed, with a timestamp and a line in bold. Child shall not be transferred without court review. Vernon stared at the line like it had the nerve to be heavier ink. This is an overreaction, he said. Our center has beds. The city pays for those beds whether they're used or not. It's efficient to move him now. We're not budgeting a human being, I said. He lifted his chin. You're out of your jurisdiction. This is a city process. Kid was found on county property, I said, and a felony forgery inside a hospital is everybody's process. My phone buzzed with a photo from patrol. The depot's parts room, chain-link cages down both sides like kennels for hardware. Each gate had a tag. C12's latch shone where a key had polished it 100 times. In the second image, a printout taped to the cage post listed access logs by badge number and timestamp. The most recent reads, Vernon, 2114. Thu. Who keeps your access logs? I asked him, holding up the photo. He didn't look. IT. Then it can explain why your badge opened the cage the night before a boy showed up in a wash bay with that cage's key in his fist. He went quiet in the way of men who think they can wait a storm out. I let the silence work. Inside the room, Renee was unwrapping Miles's gauze to check cap refill at his fingertips. This might tingle, she said. Tell me if it stings. He watched the lamp's circle halo the bandage edges. Don't shut, he breathed, a reflex at the edges of sleep. We won't, she said, and when his eyes flicked toward me, I nodded too. My shoulder mic hissed again. Unit 12. Patrol advises they found fresh footprints from the wash bay to the parts room door and along the loading dock. One suspect male fled on foot. They also recovered a child-sized hoodie and an empty ramen carton inside cage 12. Renee stilled. Inside the cage, she repeated, barely above a whisper. Bag it, I said into the mic. Photograph the scene before you move anything. Lock down the parts room. Send one unit to the janitorial closet we flagged. Copy. Vernon's voice thinned. You're drawing incorrect inferences, he said. Those cages store parts, not people. A child's hoodie proves only that we serve families. The evaluation language is an intake term. No, I said. Stop saying that word in this hallway. You use it to move kids like packages. His eyes flashed. I follow protocol. Whose? He didn't answer. The elevator down the hall chimed. A tall, broad-shouldered man in a quilted ranch jacket stepped out with the confidence of someone who had spent a life shouldering gates and walking into storms. He was followed by a woman in a charcoal suit with a leather case, her pace quick, her expression alert. The man's hair was winter gray at the temples, his boots clean but honest. The little brass plate clipped to his jacket pocket read, Wyatt Carrington. He didn't waste motion. He came to the doorway, removed his cap, and looked through the narrow window at the boy on the bed. The lines at his eyes deepened in a way that had nothing to do with age. "Mr. Carrington," I said, stepping to meet him. "Deputy Hartley." He shook my hand hard enough to say he didn't make habits of soft grips. "This your boy?" he asked, meaning assigned, not owned. "Tonight he is," I said. The attorney stepped forward. "Laura Kim, outside counsel," she said. "ASA Kim is parking." Wyatt glanced at the paper in my hand, the forged transfer order. "That from him?" he asked without looking toward Vernon. "Faxed copy. Originals in his folder. Judge denied it." Wyatt's mouth did a small, grim thing. "Good." He slid his phone out, tapped a contact, then turned it so I could see. "We help outfit fuel card systems for rural transit. My foundation gets better prices by aggregating across counties. We also have mirrors of their logs. I pulled Rapid's procurement activity when I got your call." He swiped. Fuel card entries scrolled. Dates, times, vendors. One line was highlighted. On-site fuel. After hours. HV. 0. He swiped again, to badge logs. "See the pattern?" he asked. "Thursday nights. C12. Then courier calls. Then a fuel card swipe that somehow doesn't hit the city ledger, like somebody parked a bus without moving a bus." Laura Kim leaned in. "That's an audit flag," she said. "Ghost transactions to mask on-site access." "Mr. Vernon," Wyatt said, finally letting his eyes meet the man in the wool coat. He didn't raise his voice. "You need to stop talking and call a lawyer. Preferably not the one who drafted that forgery." Vernon's jaw twitched. "You have no authority here." Wyatt made a small turn of his wrist, like opening a gate and watching a steer decide whether to bolt. "Money is not authority," he said, "but it does make records, and records talk." ASA. Kim hustled up the corridor then, breath steaming in the cold, trapped near the entry. She flashed her badge at security, at me, at Vernon with deliberate order. "Morning," she said. It wasn't morning yet, but you could see its outline. "I'm Assistant State's Attorney Kimberly Cho. Deputy, you have a forged court order and an attempted unlawful transfer." "Yes, ma'am," I said. "Judge confirmed the forgery." "Hospital has a no-transfer order posted." Procurement Director presented the document and arranged for a courier. We have text messages queuing a pickup. We have logs showing his badge opened a secure cage at the depot and evidence of a child's clothing inside that cage. Kim looked at Vernon. "Sir, you're detained while we sort this. If you need to call counsel, do so now. If you try to leave, you'll be arrested. If your counsel is city counsel, I'd advise a different phone call." He fumbled his phone out as if it had weight now. His thumb hesitated over a contact labeled City ATY, then slid to someone else, unknown number, initials DW, and thought better of it. He called the city attorney anyway. While he listened to hold music, Kim turned to Renee. "Nurse Collins, thank you for pushing pause. Document everything you did for the child. Save the fax headers and call logs." "I have a folder," Renee said, "and a nurse brain. We don't forget who asked us to dim the light." Wyatt stepped closer to the window, careful not to cross the threshold like he knew the boundary mattered. He knuckled the cap in his hands. When Miles glanced over, Wyatt lifted a finger, slow, to the lamp, and then to his own eyes, a sign between men who have known dark barns and long nights. "We'll keep it on," he said, not loud but somehow deep. Miles's face softened a degree I didn't know it had to give. He didn't look at Vernon at all. He looked at the light, at Renee, at my jacket on the chair and the notebook on my knee. The key rolled once against the blanket and settled. "We're going to need a warrant for his office in the depot," Kim said. "I've got patrol holding the doors," I said. "Judge is up. She'll sign telephonically." "Good," Kim said. "And, Deputy, if City Council gets spicy, you can handcuff Mr. Vernon for the forged order alone." Wyatt's head turned a fraction at that, not in triumph, but in a kind of calculation. What moves when a man like Vernon is removed? Who else steps forward? Where the brakes go next? Vernon pulled the phone from his ear. "City attorney is on his way," he announced to the hall as if bringing an adult into a room full of children. This is an administrative misunderstanding. Kim held out her hand. Give me the paper, she said. All of it. He hesitated, then handed over the folder. She flipped through, found the traced signature, the wrong date, the block stamp with its 2 clean edges. You got that stamp from an old template, she said. It hasn't been used since last year. The clerk changed the line spacing in January. He swallowed that. My radio chirped. Patrol again. Unit 12, we've got another photo from parts. Copy? A moment later, it buzzed my phone. A close shot through chain link. On the concrete inside C-12, a hoodie in a heap, sleeves turned inside out like it had been yanked, a cheap knit cap with a frayed rocket patch, and, in the corner of the frame, a cardboard box torn open. On the inside flap, in black marker, Thurs, Eval, Brooke. Kim saw it over my shoulder. Print that to the case file, she said, and hold Ms. Ames as a cooperating witness. I texted back, no one touches the hoodie until CSU arrives. Tape the cage. Then I glanced at the boy in the bed and felt the weight of all of it. The night lights, the talk about beds, the way systems use words to hide what they're doing until someone cuts them open and says the plain thing out loud. Vernon cleared his throat, trying one last angle. You're ruining a process designed to help, he said. You're going to make it impossible to do our jobs. Good, Wyatt said, almost gentle. If your job is this. The corridor settled. You could hear the heater fan and the scratch of a pen somewhere that wasn't ours. The printer at Renee's elbow spit one more page. The judge's formal stay order sealed. Renee slid it into a plastic sheet, hung it in a little clip on the door, and patted it like a talisman. My phone buzzed again. Patrol. Unit 12. We pulled badge data live. A Vernon entered C-12 last night at 21:14 and again at 23:02. Also, a second badge shows at 23:15, Bames. Deputy, they were both in the cage. I looked up. Through the glass, Miles shifted his hand and we heard the soft metal click of the key bumping the bed rail, a sound that, suddenly, wasn't small at all. I hated leaving the doorway, but the case needed a hand on the other end. Before I went, I crouched by the rail so Miles didn't have to lift his head. I need to open a locked place where bad decisions get made, I said, voice low enough to be a secret. The key in your hand, C-12, might be how I do it. I'll bring it right back, only if you say yes. His eyes slid to the lamp, then to my jacket on the chair, then back to my face, dumb. You'll keep the light? He whispered. Renee rolled the exam lamp an inch closer. I'll sit right by it, she said. If it flickers, I'll kick it. Wyatt, hat in his hands, leaned a shoulder against the frame like a barn door he'd promised not to let swing shut. I don't leave a calf when a storm's on, he said quietly. I'll be here with the nurse. You have my word. I set my old camp lantern on the bedside table and clicked it on, the warm bulb cutting the sterile edge off the room. I'll leave this, I said. It's not OSHA approved, but it's good luck. Miles stared at it like a son you can look at. A long breath drew through him. His bandaged fingers loosened. The key's stamped letters flashed, and slowly, like he was deciding what kind of world this was, he turned his palm over and let the key slide into mine. Back soon, I said. He nodded once. It weighed more than a key when I dropped it into an evidence envelope, labeled, initialed, the chain of custody beginning where a child's trust had started it. Kim walked with me to the elevator, talking warrants. Judge will take a telephonic, she said, already dialing. You'll have paper in your inbox by the time you get there. Patrol's guarding doors at the depot, I said. Hold Vernon with security here. If city council gets sticky... She smiled without humor. I like sticky. Outside, Rapid City was a knife between the ribs. I drove past the lighted dinosaur on the hill, its green outline ghosting the winter dark, and followed East Boulevard south until the depot loomed up, concrete and sheet metal with a few high windows throwing weak squares onto the snow. Patrol's units idled along the fence line. A tech van from CSU parked crooked by the loading dock, hood ticking. Jared met me by the door with a set of keys on a retractable belt and worry like he hadn't slept since last week. "You got the judge?" he asked. Kim texted a PDF at the same moment dispatch pushed it to my MDT. "Warrant's hot," I said. "We start with the parts room." Inside was colder than outside. Heat never finds corners in buildings like this. The wash bay still stank of detergent and diesel. My lantern had left a memory print of warm light on the concrete that was, of course, only in my head. The janitor closet's door had evidence tape across it. A patrolman stood by, hand near, but not on his holster, like the room itself might try to run. We turned left into the parts room. Chain-link cages ran the length of it in 2 rows. Fluorescent bars bright enough to raise a headache. CSU lights added white on white. The feed of a camera blinked a green LED above the door. The DVR sat in a metal locker against the far wall. "Everything you do is photographed before you do it," I said to no one and to myself, and CSU answered with clicks and the soft shutter hum that never sounds like it does on TV. C12 waited halfway down on the right. Its tag had a thumb smudge like someone had pressed the dot of the 12 hard. The latch was locked. "Gloves," I said. Nitrile snapped. I held the envelope up to Jared. "This came from a child's hand. We'll keep it separate from the cage's bag." He nodded, sober. I opened the evidence envelope, slid the key out like it could sting, and fit it into the lock. It turned like it belonged there. The gate swung. CSU leaned in with a pole-mounted light to flood the space without bodies. The first impression was parts. Boxes of brake pads and hoses, a bin of bolts. The second impression was not parts at all. A folded gray moving blanket on a flattened cardboard box, an empty ramen carton, a half-used roll of painter's tape, a plastic jug of water with a Sharpie line drawn at mid-level and "Thurs" written under it. On the back wall, at shin level, a rectangular patch of scrubbed concrete where something had been dragged out and then dragged back in. Above that, fashioned from a strip of aluminum flashing screwed into the posts, a narrow ledge. On it, a cheap battery clamp light, the kind you find in a farm store, aimed to throw its beam down. It was off. "Don't flip any switches," I said. "Photograph placement first." CSU did their dance. I read labels while they read angles. There was a clipboard with a grid. The heading printed "Inventory Cycle," but the rows were handwritten. C12, Thurs, C11, Mon, C9, Stein, Wed. Under C12, names had been written and crossed out with initials in a different hand than the list header. MK9, Eval, Hold. Under that, CS7, Eval, Hold. A blank space gaped under those entries like a missing rung. "God," Jared breathed. "Keep it on the cart," I said. "We'll bag it after prints." CSU rolled their kit forward to dust the clip. Within the box chaos, the parts were stacked just inside the gate, making a false front. Behind them, a narrow lane opened to that moving blanket nest and light shelf. The cold in there felt different, the kind of cold that holds breath and listens. Patrol stepped in with the DVR's cables in hand. "We've got inside cameras," he said. "No mic, but motion logs. A lot of movement at 21 o'clock hours last night, then again at 23:15. Badge data shows Vernon, then Bames." "Pull the footage," I said. "We'll mirror the drive before we play." He nodded, already setting the recorder down for CSU to bag and tag. I knelt and slid 2 fingers under the moving blanket edge with the gentleness of someone stealing a sleeping baby's sock. Brown paper crackled. Beneath the blanket, someone had taped a strip of cardboard to the concrete, its inside flap a ledger of its own. "Brooke, Thurs, H-Wing, 0230. Another line under it, older ink, worn with a heel. "Evelyn, 10th, drop." A circle around the E like a target. I photographed it in situ. My mouth tasted like dry copper. "Find me an E on that clipboard," I said to CSU. She flipped and scanned. No. Just the 2 entries, MK and CS. I replaced the blanket, didn't tuck it the way I wanted to because a scene isn't a bed you fuss over. I pointed to the clamp lamp. We'll check the bulb later. For now, mark its angle. Jared, helpless at the edge of things, held the gate. I never saw this, he said. I walk past this every night. That's what they count on, I said. Patrol at the DVR cleared his throat. Deputy, before I power down, motion log shows one more trigger at 01:55. No badge swipe after, no door open. Something moved in there without the cage opening. Mouse, someone muttered. Or kid, the CSU tech said, not dramatic. Or the blanket shifting because someone slammed a door. The world moves when you don't look. I stood, the weight of the key in my pocket as present as the boy at the hospital. Bag the ramen carton, I said. Swab the water jug spout. Lift prints off the clipboard and the lamp. After we're done here, we hit C11. C11 key's missing from the board, the patrolman reminded me. Then we find it, or we cut the lock, I said. But we photograph it first. I stepped out of the cage and looked back at the gray rectangle where someone's shoulders had worn the concrete smoother than the rest. They taught him to stare at a light so he wouldn't fight the dark, I said to no one in particular, and the room answered by humming. Dispatch broke in. Unit 12, copy a welfare check at 312 East North. Evelyn Keaton's listed address. Unit reports door secured, shades drawn, no answer. There is mail in the box, date stamps 1 week out. Hold the perimeter, I said. Do not force without me or ASA. Knock once on a neighbor. I need 2 minutes to wrap here. My phone buzzed at the same time. A text from Renee. Admin called asking to clear a bed and send him to assessment at 070 Quo. I told them we have a court hold. Also, maintenance just showed up to fix a flicker in H-Wing. No work order in the system. He's asking for our room. I wrote, do not let maintenance in. Call security to the door. Keep the lamp on. I'm sending Wyatt to the hall. Wyatt answered my next call in half a ring. Yeah. Renee's got a walk-in maintenance with no work order. Put your shoulder in the door. You got it, he said, and was gone before I finished telling him what to do. Back at the cage, CSU handed me a small Ziploc. We found this under the blanket edge, she said. Inside, a cheap orange earplug, the kind you wear when machines scream. It had a smear of something gray on it. Soap, if you wanted to tell yourself a story about kindness. Tape adhesive, if you didn't. I bagged it with the care you give to the smallest hinge on a big door. My shoulder mic crackled again. ASA Kim. City Council's here, posturing, she said. I asked security to copy all access logs. Vernon's counsel is advising him to say nothing. Brooke's in tears. She says she thought evaluation meant a placement screen with toys and a clinician. She wants to cooperate. Keep her, I said. She's a witness who goes to intent. My phone buzzed a second time. Renee again. One word first. Now. Then, he's got a badge and a flashlight. Says he needs to inspect the fixture. Security's with me, but he's pushy. Open the speaker, I told her, hitting call so I could hear her room. I caught the murmur of voices, the steady hum of the little exam lamp, and then the new voice, male, practiced calm. Ma'am, I'm just going to take a quick look at the ballast. It's a safety issue. You can look from out there, Renee said, even. Work order number? A shuffle. Paper. The man tried confidence. It's a verbal. Admin called it in. Then admin can walk it down, Wyatt said, his voice a low chalk in a wheel. Until then, the light stays. Sir, you can't block me, the man said. You don't have authority. He does, Renee said. I do, and that order on the door does. We are not dimming anything. I heard it then. The tiny tick-tick of fingers on a plastic switch plate. Not enough to cut power, enough to make a kid flinch. Across town, in a cage built for bolts and in a tiny circle of lamplight in H-Wing, the same instinct traveled through me. I'm en route, lights and siren, I said into the mic, already moving. No one touches that fixture. If he puts a hand past the threshold without a work order, he's trespassing. Security, detain. The man's voice sharpened. "This is ridiculous." On the open line, a whisper like paper sliding over stone, and then a very small voice, almost lost under machines. "Don't shut," Miles said. The click that followed wasn't loud. It was the soft sound a thumb makes finding the edge of a switch. The corridor bled a cold draft from the elevator well. I took the stairs two at a time and hit the H-wing door at a jog, badge up. Security had formed a human wedge, two broad backs between a man with a tool belt and Renee's doorway. The man wore a navy polo with a stitched logo that looked like a hospital vendor and a laminated badge with "Maintenance" in all caps. His flashlight was small and black, the kind you can click with your thumb without looking. "Sir, step back from the threshold," the lead guard said. "I need to check the ballast," the man insisted, tone patient like a mechanic explaining tires to a child. "If that fixture arcs, you'll have a smoke event in 10 minutes. "Work order number?" Renee asked, steady. He thumbed his flashlight on and, to prove a point or to twitch a nerve, tapped the switch plate with the light's end. The tiny tick carried into the room. Miles's voice rose from the bed like a thread. "Don't shut." I moved into the wedge until my shoulder brushed the doorframe. "Name?" I asked. He lifted his chin. "Tim Avery. Facilities." I looked down at his badge and saw the first lie, a date sticker off by a month. The second was his barcode, the font wrong, spacing off, the kind of fake that slides past at midnight if no one looks on purpose. "Let me see it," I said, and when he hesitated, the security guard took it. I reached for his flashlight. "And this." He handed it over with a sigh that was supposed to be annoyance and not relief. It was heavier than it should have been. I twisted the end cap and spilled a coil of fishing line and a paperclip on my palm. The clip was bent to a tiny hook. "Fishing for the switch?" I asked. "Stand across the threshold and click in the dark without paying the entry alarm?" His eyes flickered over my shoulder, toward the bed, the lamp, toward the kid whose world shrank when light went out. The guard stiffened. Renee didn't move at all. She was a lighthouse. "I need to see a supervisor," he said. "You will," I said. "Hands where I can see them." He lifted them, slow. The tool belt clinked. I cuffed his wrists in front, safety in a hospital, and guided him to the wall. "You're detained for trespass and criminal impersonation. If you tug on that door again, I'll make it resisting." His phone vibrated against his hip. I took it before he could think about it, and a text banner slid across the lock screen from an unsaved number. "C11's clear. Move CS now." I showed the screen to Renee, then to the guard. "Read it," I said. The guard's jaw moved like he'd bit a nail. "Who's CS?" I asked the man. He pressed his lips into a line. Sweat stood in the beard line along his jaw. He looked like a man who wasn't paid enough for the lie he was inside, but wasn't brave enough to step out of it. "I don't know," he said. "I just fix things." "Tonight, you fix nothing," I said. "Security, family room 2. Keep him there until ASA Kim interviews." Renee exhaled for the first time since the tap on the plate. She re-angled the exam lamp by a fingernail's width. Miles watched her hand, then the light. His fingers flexed under gauze. The key wasn't in his hand anymore, but the habit of holding something for dear life doesn't vanish when you free the palm. He found my lantern on the bedside table with his gaze and stayed there like a compass. Wyatt had one shoulder planted against the jamb, arms folded. He gave me a nod that said two things at once. "Good," and "keep going." "I've got to clear Evelyn's," I told Renee. "Kim's on floor 2 with City Council. Wyatt stays. If this wing so much as blinks, you lean on that switch." She touched the lamp with her knuckle like you pat a horse before you ask it to carry something uphill. "We won't shut," she said, a promise now threaded through 5 throats. Outside, the sky had shifted from black to that blue that knows dawn is coming, even if the sun hasn't committed. Frost creaked under my boots. The heater in my cruiser hiccuped and then steadied. I toggled lights but kept the siren off. Neighbors sleep light in cheap apartments, and the ones I needed to talk to would turn a deadbolt at the first wail. 312. East-north sat in a cluster of bungalows that looked like the wind had leaned on them all winter. Patrol had tape across the walk and a unit idling with its exhaust making a ghost in the street lamp. A neighbor in a robe took in the show through a curtain, phone already in her hand like she was weighing whether to call her sister or Facebook Live. "Knocks?" I asked. "3," the patrolman said. "No answer. Mails piled. No car. We smelled bleach on the landing." ASA Kim pulled up as I said it, hair knotted, breath fog. "Judges on standby," she said without hello. "We have exigency for welfare if you can articulate risk." "Adult female with minor child missing contact," I said. "Linked to a fraudulent order for a child transfer. Note in hospital file suggests harm if we delay. Suspect attempted entry at hospital under false credentials. We don't risk burning time on a warrant while evidence washes away." Kim nodded once. "I'll catch it on the back end. You call it." "Breach," I said to patrol. We used the least ugly method, credit card the latch didn't respect, a push-through of a cheap slide bolt, and stepped into dark that smelled like cheap cleaner, old noodles, and fear. I stood still a beat to let the room tell me if it had a pulse. A fridge hummed. The heat had been set low. On the table, an envelope sat with groceries scrawled on the front and 4 items crossed. Milk, ramen, gloves, batteries. A 5th line had been added later, darker ink, harder hand. C12, Thurs. "Lights?" Kim asked. "Leave the overheads off," I said. "Pocket lights. He likes lamps." We worked small beams. In the kitchen, a ramen box lay open with 2 packets left, orange corners torn. A corkboard beside the fridge had a grid of newsprint clippings with dates underlined. 3 had the city seal in the corner and a line about assessment center efficiency. A sticky note in Evelyn's tight hand had the words "evaluation equals moved," with arrowheads like teeth. In the bedroom, a twin mattress was made military neat. A second one on the floor with rocket sheets, half-off patch fraying at the edge. I stood in the doorway and felt a kid's life rise up. Crayon on the baseboard, a Lego underfoot. 3 library books rubber-banded with a slip marking them lost. On the wall, a picture of a lighthouse cut from a magazine, and underneath a post-it stuck straight. "Keep light on." The letters were a child's, all uphill. In the bathroom, the mirror had been wiped in a rush. Streaks like someone's unwanted reflection had to go. Under the sink, taped to the cabinet back with painter's tape, the same blue from the depot cage, a Ziploc lay flat. Inside, a copy of a badge log with H. Vernon highlighted, a printout of a fuel card $0 swipe, a photo of the parts room grid with C12, Thurs circled. On a folded index card beneath, a phone number and the words, "For the cop with a lantern." I swallowed. "She came ready to be found," I said. Kim took a long breath. "Or ready to be gone," she said. "Put it in the chain." We bagged the packet. Patrol called from the hallway. "Deputy, back door's got fresh scuffs. Someone left through here. We have footprints in the alley, 2 sizes, 1 small." "Small, how?" "Kid, small." Ice rang through my chest. "Direction?" "Toward the transit lot," he said. "Of course," Kim said under her breath. We followed the alley 50 yards until footprints disappeared into a mess of tire chew and ice. A neighbor's porch light clicked on. A dog decided it was his moment and announced it to the block. I felt the curve of the night stretching long between a living room lamp and a chain-link cage. Dispatch bleated in my shoulder. "Unit 12, hospital update," the operator said. "Security reports a second person approached H-Wing asking for Collins. A woman, dark parka, clipboard. They denied entry. She left northbound on foot. Description matches Ms. Ames, but Brooke is with ASA. Possible look-alike." "A stand-in," Kim said. "Keeps the first witness cooperative while they use a second to try again." My phone vibrated. "Renee, he's okay. Lamps on. Wyatt's got the door." City admin called again to coordinate bed capacity. I told them, call the judge. I typed back a heartless cop text because my hands kept emotions on a leash on scene. Copy, hold. We worked through the rest of the apartment. A closet with a box of boy clothes assorted by size and thrift store. A drawer with a stack of letters returned, no forwarding address. On the inside of the front door, on the deadbolt plate, a little pencil mark at lock with a longer line to the side. Call Wyatt. Kim looked at it and stepped back, palms flexing once at her sides like she'd resist throwing something heavy. She was mapping her exits, she said. Someone's been teaching her to use the right words and the right doors. Back in the kitchen, I saw one more thing. Almost nothing. A matchbook from a truck stop off I-90, open, 2 matches missing, and on the inside flap, a number pressed so hard it ghosted through, 605 XX XXXX. Beside it, a first initial, B. Brooke, I said. Kim nodded, face hard. Or B, whoever is above her. We stepped outside. The sky had paled to the color of old paper. The dinosaur on the hill looked tired. My breath came out in steam that moved like an answer to a question I hadn't asked yet. Dispatch again. Deputy, CSU recovered latent prints in C12 on the clamp lamp and the water jug. 2 adult patterns, 1 juvenile. We'll rush match against city employee files. Also, patrol at the depot located a second cage with signs of similar use. C11 lock shows fresh scrape marks consistent with forced entry with a narrow object. No key found. My pocket hummed with the weight of C12's key in its envelope. I thought of the fishing line in the fake maintenance flashlight, the bent paper clip. Forced entry doesn't need a key when you believe a door belongs to you. I looked east, as if I could see through concrete and distance and find my lantern haloing a child's breath. The phone vibrated in my hand before I could call. A text from an unknown number, no name, just words. If you keep that kid, people lose money. Turn the light off. I held the screen up to Kim. She read it, her mouth flattening. We're past hints, she said. We're at threats. My radio cracked one more time, the voice from the hospital threaded thin with the sound of a heater and the squeak of a shoe on wax. Renee, breath low. Dean, she said into the mic as if she'd saved my frequency as a prayer. We have company again. And then, faint under her words, a child's voice, the one the night had taught me to hear. Don't shut. The elevator doors slid open on H-Wing, and I stepped into a different kind of night. Bright, humming, guarded by people who'd decided to be awake for strangers. A security guard I hadn't met yet had planted his feet outside Renee's doorway. His jacket fit like a loner, and his eyes did the fast scan of a man who'd learned the building's corners in a hurry. Company? I asked. He tilted his chin toward the intersection where 2 hallways crossed. A woman in a navy suit stood there with a tablet clutched to her chest like a hymn book. She had a city badge on a retractable clip and a face set for meetings. Beside her, a man in green scrubs with an ID that read Biomed. Shadowing them poorly, a tall shape with a parka hood up and a cap tugged low, trying for anonymous and landing on loud. Renee stepped out of the room just far enough that her hand could still touch the lamp cord where it vanished under the door gasket. Admin liaison, biomed tech, and a guy who says he's from fire safety, she murmured. Fire safety has no last name. Admin wants to reconcile orders and clear a bed, the woman in navy said before I could ask. Her voice was clipped, flat. We're here to perform a non-invasive ballast inspection. There was a maintenance request, and H-Wing needs to certify fixtures at shift change. Work order number, I said. She tapped the tablet. Generated verbally by the city administrator's office. Judge's stay order is posted on the door, I said. No transfer, no entry without a work order. If your ballast needs love, it can wait until after 8. Until then, we don't touch lights. The biomed tech looked genuinely apologetic in the way of guys who fix pumps and hate policy. I just fix things, he said. If the ballast arcs, you'll smell it first. We'll take it over a forged court order, Renee said, voice calm, hands steady on the lamp cord like it was a leash on a big dog. The man in the parka shifted his weight. His badge was a visitor pass, blank line filled with FS. His eyes flicked to the door handle and back. I clocked the scuffs on his knuckles and the cheap boots 2 sizes too big. Shoes you can walk away from. Name, I said. Fire safety, he repeated. That's a role. Try a noun you were given at birth? He didn't answer. His hand twitched toward the lamp switch plate inside the room he hadn't entered. The guard edged between him and the jam. The corridor heater cut in, blowing a warm current of dry air that carried floor wax and citrus cleaner. Down the hall, someone laughed in a room where the bad news hadn't arrived yet. It sounded like a different world. My shoulder mic crackled with ASA Kim. I'm on your floor with City Council, she said. Where do you want me? Here, I said. Bring a copy of the stay order and the forgery. Kim came around the corner at a clip, City Council 2 steps behind, wearing the weary disapproval of a man whose day had begun without coffee. Kim didn't give him her eyes. She gave them to the admin liaison instead. No one crosses this threshold, she said. The court has spoken. The liaison swallowed. We're not attempting transfer. You're attempting the pretext for one, Kim said. You dim the lamp and you trigger a panic response. You document agitation. Then you move him for evaluation under your own notes. This is over. The biomed tech lifted his hands. Ma'am, I swear, I believe you, Kim said. Step back. The parka man made the mistake of scoffing. Kim's head snapped. And you? Lose the hood, show your ID, or you leave in cuffs. He took a half step back and put his hands in his pockets. Security moved as one animal, shoulders widening. He thought better and eased his hands out. No ID, just a nervous pick of a thumbnail. I nodded to the guard. Family room 2. Hold him until we can figure out which closet he fell out of. He started to object, then clocked Kim's badge and mine and let himself be escorted by gravity. Renee exhaled so softly I almost missed it. Behind her, through the narrow glass, I saw the boy's eyes fixed on the lamplit circle like a sailor on a fixed star. The bandage around his fingers had loosened a hair where the nurse had checked circulation. The impression of stamped letters showed faintly in the gauze, red-grooved skin against white cloth. When the hallway talk swelled, he whispered the reflex that had become our liturgy. Don't shut. We won't, Renee said, not turning from the door. We're a lighthouse. Wyatt had been quiet, hat tucked under his arm, listening hard the way men do when they're deciding where to put their shoulder next. He stepped to the liaison, voice low. Ma'am, I give a lot of money to this hospital's equipment fund, he said. Not boast, just ledger. If you need ballasts before 8, we'll get you ballasts. If you need a new wing, we'll talk. But if you're here to help a bad actor manufacture a paper trail, call your supervisor and tell them you balked. There's grace for balking. She stared at him for a long beat that measured the distance between being useful and being used. Then she stepped back. Biomed, she said, log a delay. Site court hold. He nodded with relief big enough to be embarrassing, shouldered his toolkit, and retreated. My phone buzzed. Patrol at the depot had cut C11. Inside, a moving blanket, ramen carton, taped water jug at a lower shelf height, a child's drawing on a scrap of invoice paper, stick figure in a cage, a square above with slashes like rain, a rectangle with dots that might be a lamp. The stick figure had 2 letters over its head, CS. In the corner, in the tight adult hand we'd come to recognize, the word Thurs. Another message arrived before I could type a response. Renee. Miles asked for the other kid. He said CS got Thursday when I said I couldn't say the alphabet under the light. He thinks CS is smaller. I swallowed. We have a second child, I told Kim. Initials CS, C11. Thursday transfers. If they pushed last night, he's gone. Kim didn't blink. Then we expand, she said. We pull Brooke all the way across the line. Brooke was already waiting down the hall in the family room, hands wrapped around a paper cup that had cooled twice. She looked younger here than at the elevator, less courier, more person who'd gone along until going along broke something she remembered having. Kim sat with her and put the forged order on the table. "Brooke," she said, voice like a steadied metronome, "we know you logged into C12 and C11 with Mr. Vernon. We know you arrived at H-Wing with a forged order. If you continue to cooperate, you'll be a witness, not a defendant. Tell us who CS is." Brooke stared at the order and then at the cup, as if both might ruin the table. Her voice came out scrubbed nearly clean of tears. "They told me evaluation meant a few hours with a clinician. Toys, snacks. The center has murals." She blinked slow. "CS is a girl. 7. Caroline Sutter? No. Sutton. Her intake was marked Wednesday and then pushed to Thursday because the clinician was out. They told me to move her to a private room to wait. It's a closet with a camera." Her face flinched like the word closet had finally burned. "Hal said the contractor would be by at 2300 with an admin order. He said the parent couldn't make it. So we were doing the family a favor." "There's a contractor?" Kim asked. Brooke nodded. "Vernon calls him Dan. I never saw a last name. He drives an old airport shuttle bus. White, no decals. I never looked at the plate until last week. Montana tag. It started with 5. Wyatt's mouth did a small furious thing. "Airport shuttle is a perfect ghost," he said. "Everyone expects it to be near buses." Brooke's hands found each other, fingers weaving like a net too late to catch. "He gives Hal an envelope and I get a fuel card credit to my city account. A bonus. $40. The emails say reimbursement for overtime." Kim made a note. "Do you have the emails?" "Yes," Brooke whispered. "On my phone. And at home." She looked up as if surfacing. "I can't sleep, so I forward things to myself. I know it's stupid. But I didn't want the files to vanish if someone audited." "It's not stupid," Kim said. "It's the reason we will find this girl." I stood, needing motion. "We've got a bus," I said. "We've got a Montana plate starting with 5. We have video from the depot. We have a second cage with a name. We need airport cameras, depot feeds, and any city traffic cams along East Boulevard and La Crosse last night between 2300 and 03. "On it," the security supervisor said from the doorway, lifting a walkie that sounded like it had never been asked to do this much government. "I'll get IT. Our guy's a wizard." I toggled my radio. "Dispatch, Bolo for a white airport shuttle bus, older model, Montana plate starting with 5. Last known in Rapid City near Transit Depot, possibly around Monument. Likely driven by male, known as Dan. Tie to procurement director. Treat as kidnapping transport." "Copy, Unit 12, dispatch said, voice going a degree colder. Down the hall, the lights gave a tiny dip. Not a flicker. More like a breath the building forgot it was holding. Everyone froze. Renee's hand tightened on the lamp cord. "Generator test?" she asked into the air. "Not scheduled," the security supervisor said, already at his walkie. "Facilities, status." A thin voice came back too fast. We're doing a panel check, just routine." "By whose order?" he asked. Static. Then, "Admin." The supervisor lifted his eyes to mine. I was already moving. "Which panel?" I asked. "Basement," he said. "East Mechanical." Wyatt stepped into the doorway of Miles's room like a doorstop that had made up its mind. "Go," he said without looking back. "We've got the light." Kim fell in beside me. We hit the stairs like a two-man engine. The basement was its own weather. Cooler, concrete sweat damp, smelling of dust on hot metal. The mechanical room door was propped with a wedge. Inside, 2 men stood by an open breaker cabinet, one in a facilities polo, the other in a plain jacket. The jacket man had a laminated badge that said Temp. His hand hovered near a bank of switches labeled H-Wing. A, H-Wing, B. "Hands away from the panel," I said. voice flat enough to iron. Now! The facilities guy flinched and stepped back, palms up. The temp held his ground a second too long, like he could complete some mission with a flick if he guessed my speed wrong. Then he turned, slow, a smile he hadn't practiced enough pasted on. "We're preventing an overload," he said. Kim held up the stay order like a shield with ink for edges. "If you touch that breaker, I'll charge you with felony interference," she said. "And then I'll call the judge, and you'll do your explanation in front of a bench at 9:01. The temp's eyes cut to the facilities man, then back to me. "I have a verbal," he said weakly. "Verbal doesn't beat paper," I said. "Step away." He stepped, not far. I put him on the wall and cuffed him before his nerve could recalcify. His phone vibrated in his pocket. I pulled it and looked. Unknown. Ballast Arca Risk. Pull A only. Quick. My lungs did a slow, hard pump. They wanted us to dim, not kill. Enough to make a note, enough to trigger an agitation box on a form. We walked them up. Security took the temp like a package you don't want to drop. Facilities. Man stammered apologies. I halfway believed. Kim said, "We'll sort intent later," and I saw the line she'd drawn already. Not every cog is a gear. At the H-wing door, the lamp still burned. Miles's eyes were open, steady on the circle of warm light. He didn't watch us. He watched the thing we'd all decided meant the world still worked. He drew a breath. "Still on," he whispered, and it sounded like victory whispered through cracked lips. My phone buzzed with a number I didn't recognize and a text that didn't require an introduction. "The bus isn't going far. Look where fuel is free." And underneath, a single letter, E. The text glowed against my palm like a fuse. "The bus isn't going far. Look where fuel is free." E. Kim read it, eyebrows kick up quick. "On-site pumps," she said. "Depot or city yard," I answered. $0 swipes masked as maintenance. We saw one on Vernon's logs. Wyatt was already dialing. "My foundation's mirror hits the vendor API," he said, the sentence so absurdly modern coming out of a rancher's mouth that the corridor felt briefly sane again. "We see pump events as they post." He listened, nodded. "Ping me any live activations at Rapid Transit or the City Fleet Yard." He hung up, pocketed the phone, and looked at me. 2 minutes, maybe less. Renee leaned into the door window. The lamp threw a warm coin of light across Miles's face. He didn't follow the talk, he followed the glow. "You okay?" she asked. He blinked slow. "Still on," he whispered. Wyatt's phone buzzed. He glanced down, then up. "Live draw at the transit depot," he said. "Pump 3. It started 30 seconds ago. Vendor says card ID tied to a maintenance placeholder. No name, but it rolls up under procurement." Kim's mouth went flat. "There's our exigency," she said. "Kidnapping in progress. Vehicle at a known city asset. We don't wait a warrant for a pump." I keyed my mic. "Dispatch, all units. Active fuel draw at Rapid Transit Pump 3. White shuttle bus, Montana plate starting with 5. Hold perimeters, block egress at La Crosse and East Boulevard. I'm en route with ASA. CSU, stay out of lanes. We're hot." "Copy, Unit 12. Units en route." Wyatt clamped a hand on my forearm, brief, like you steady a man before he drops from a fence. "Bring the child out slow," he said. "If there's a girl, she'll be light shy." I didn't need the reminder. I took it anyway. We hit the stairs. Boots finding rhythm with the hospital's new morning, the whir of a floor buffer, the first coffee on a nurse's breath. At the doors, cold slapped me like truth. Kim slid into her sedan, I into my cruiser. We killed sirens until the last turn, then lit the sky enough to make the pump hand freeze. The depot gates hung open to a yard silvered with frost. I cut across the wash bay apron. Diesel ghosts lingered. Ahead, the on-site island crouched under a metal canopy, snow rimmed around its concrete pad. Pump 3 was lit, numbers climbing. Beside it, an aging white airport shuttle bus, engine idling low. No decals. The front curtains pulled tight with a binder clip. Its rear tires straddled a patch of black ice like a bad decision. I braked hard into an angle that blocked the driver's door. Another patrol car slid in at the bus's rear. 2 more boxed the exit. The pump's screen stuttered as if frustrated it couldn't do arithmetic faster than our feet. "Sheriff's office!" I shouted across the cold, badge high, muzzle low. "Hands where I can see them!" The driver popped from behind the pump. Late 40s, wind chapped, the ring of a man who smokes in doorways and tells himself it's not a habit. He wore a hunting cap with ear flaps and the blank, stubborn face of someone who will ask for a policy while the house burns. He twitched a glance toward the bus and then tried this. "City contractor," he said, flashing a laminated card with Dan on a sticker label. "You're blocking my refuel." "Turn it off," I said. He made a show of confusion. "The pump? For what?" Kim didn't bother with the script. "Because federal kidnapping statutes don't care which department you bill," she said. "Step back." He put one hand up like a man backing away from a dog. The other drifted toward the pump handle. He bumped the lever. The meter froze. Fuel dripped, 3 slow tears. I slid close enough to feel the heat off the bus's radiator through my pants. "Hands on your head," I said. "Do it now." He obeyed, chin, teeth clenched. A patrolman took him, patted him down, cuffed him, read him a rights verse that turned winter breath to steam. Kim angled to the bus's side door. "Glass?" she asked. "Curtains," I said. "No view." I touched the metal, only slightly warmer than the air, and heard it. A small cough, 2 beats behind itself, the kind of sound a child makes when a room has taught her not to make sounds. I felt the memory of my lantern's weight like a coin I'd lost and found again. "Caroline?" I asked through the seam where the curtain met frame, voice low enough to honor a secret. "My name is Dean. We're going to open the door, and the light might feel bright. We'll keep it soft. The light stays on, okay?" A whisper from inside. I didn't catch words, only the shape of them, an upward lilt like a question asked to nobody and everybody. I nodded to the patrolman with the breaching kit. "We try the latch first," I said. "If it sticks, we cut." The patrolman tested the outer handle. Locked. He slipped a sliver of steel into the gap and levered soft, the way you learn to open a door without telling it you're opening it. The latch clicked. He caught my eye and waited, breathing fog. "Slow," I said. We slid the door open 3 inches, then 6. A wedge of the bus's interior cut the winter air. Gray vinyl seats, a strip of taped cardboard across the ceiling where a light panel should have been, a clamp lamp bolted to a seat back, aimed down at a nest of moving blankets. On the floor near the step, a ramen cup rocked, empty, the brand I could recognize blind now. Kim took off her coat and held it in front of the doorway like a makeshift shade, letting light in at an angle. "Hi, Caroline," she said, a prosecutor's voice softened to human. "We're with the sheriff's office. No one's going to shut your light. We're going to lift you out slow." Behind the lamp's circle, a small form shifted. Thinner than it should have been, a hoodie zipped to the throat, hair matted flat where a cap had slept and been taken. 2 eyes flinched, then fixed on the lamp itself as if the face behind it didn't matter. "Lamp stays," I said, "to the air, to the bus, to the world." I bent to the steps, let my eyes adjust to the dark, and lifted a hand so it entered the cone of light first. "Hey, kiddo," I murmured. "You're safe. Count with me. 1, 2. We'll stand on 3. I used the same cadence I'd used with Miles in the ambulance, the rhythm a rope you can pull hand over hand. She didn't take my hand. She let me set it on her forearm. Her skin was cold through the hoodie. On the inside seam, a laundry marker had written CS in tight letters. She followed the lamp. Not me. The lamp. I could have been anybody. I didn't mind. We drew her out like you draw a story out of someone who has learned to make her sentences small. Kim's coat became a tent to make winter a little less sharp. When Caroline's shoes hit the concrete, she made a sound, almost relief. Then she coughed again, the double beat. "Ambulance," I said. The depot's siren answered from a block out. Behind us, the driver laughed once, short and desperate. "She was scheduled for evaluation," he said, as if a word could stand between him and the law. "I have a purchase order. You can't—" "You're done talking," Kim said without turning her head. She faced his laminated card on the ground where it lay, stepped on it with the heel of her boot, and ground the sticker Dan into the frost. "And we are absolutely seizing this bus." Renee's voice came through my mic so faint I almost missed it under the depot wind. "Dean? Miles is awake? He asked if the other kid is afraid of the light." I looked at the clamp lamp, at the taped ceiling, at the ramen cup skittering in a tiny circle like a planet that had lost its star. "Tell him she has a lighthouse," I said, "and it's staying on." CSU slid in, a warm blanket materializing out of someone's trunk. The medic gentled it around Caroline's shoulders. She winced, flinched, then stilled, eyes still locked on the lamp. "Do you want the lamp to ride with you?" I asked. It was idiotic and perfect. She gave one precise nod. I unscrewed the clamp lamp with gloved fingers, cradled it like a kitten you don't want to startle, and set it on the stretcher frame. The medic strapped it to the side rail with a blood pressure cuff. It threw a small circle on the girl's lap. She stared into that sun, and for the first time, not at the floor. "Renee," I said into my radio. "We found her. 7-ish, Caroline Sutton. She's headed to you. Please keep her lamp on." "We're ready," she breathed. I turned back to the bus. Something else moved inside, a rustle under the blanket at the far row, a sound too heavy for air. I lifted the coat shade again, and saw a rectangle of paper taped under a seat. On it, block letters, E, 10th, drop. If adrenaline had a temperature, mine dropped 10 degrees. Evelyn's hand. A date. Kim read my face as if it were testimony. "She was here," she said, "or came here to leave that." I pulled the tape with care, bagged the note. My phone buzzed. Wyatt again. Vendor shows pump 3 draw interrupted at 07:01. Another draw spiked at the city fleet yard at 06:58, lasted 2 minutes. Card ID masked, same bucket. Bus could have topped off there first. 2 stops, I said, runs in a loop. Pickup, paper, fuel, drop. Kim's gaze shifted over my shoulder to the depot's far fence line where chain link met an old maintenance shed with its side door kicked soft. Fresh prints in the weak frost curved from the shed to the alley gate. "Maybe 3, she said. The patrolman at my elbow tipped his chin toward a row of dark bus bays. "Deputy," he murmured, "we've got a light inside Bay C, not fluorescence. A small one, like a tent, or—" He didn't finish. He didn't have to. We fanned left, a breath held across 4 bodies. The bay's rolling door was down. A man door sat to its right with a wired glass window filmed by years of spray. Through it, I saw it. The faint, orangey glow you get from a cheap battery lantern pitched under canvas, the shape of a moving blanket built into a makeshift blind, the kind of light you could shut with a thumb. I pressed my ear to the seam and heard breathing that wasn't mine, then the click of something small and plastic being turned between fingers. A key. C11. I breathed to Kim. If he left a second, he might be— A shadow cut the little light, then resolved into the outline of a man crouched low, head turned toward the door like he could hear us thinking. In his hand, metal flashed. On the ground by my boot, a strip of painter's tape lifted and fluttered against my ankle, a blue flag that had come unstuck. I wrapped my fingers around the knob, felt the cold bite through nitrial, and met Kim's eyes. "On 3, I mouthed. She nodded, tight. Somewhere across the yard, the ambulance doors thumped closed around a child with a lamp. Somewhere across town, a boy in a hospital bed held a world together with a promise. 1, I whispered, the word forming fog. 2, Kim breathed. I drew in the air I needed for the third number, and the key on the other side of the door ticked once against metal like a heartbeat about to choose a speed. Kim's hand hovered near the knob, eyes on mine. I mouthed the count, 1, 2, and on 3 we moved. The door blew inward off the weak strike, the hinge squalling. Inside, the bay smelled like wet canvas and diesel. The tent blanket blind hunched against the wall, clamped to a ladder with blue painter's tape. A cheap battery lantern glowed under it, amber, steady. "Sheriff's office," I called, low, not for show. "Hands where I can see them." The crouched shape rose fast. Wrong choice. Metal flashed. I shouldered in, Kim slid left, and the blade skimmed the air where my forearm had been. He wasn't trained. He was desperate. I hooked his wrist, felt the knife bump bone, torqued, and let gravity finish. The blade clattered to concrete. Kim kicked it dead against the cinder block. "Hands," I said, breath steady because someone needed to be, "on your head." He complied in jerks, eyes cutting to the blanket as if it were a door to an exit he'd forgotten. Up close, mid-40s, wind chapped like the driver, stubble that had learned to lie. A visitor sticker on his parka read Dan in Sharpie. I cuffed him, checked his belt, paper clips, fishing line, a tiny flathead screwdriver ground thin. Kim's face didn't change, but her voice did. "We've met," she said. "You deliver invoices with no signatures." He smiled because men like this always try a mask. It didn't fit. "I'm a contractor," he said. "You're a courier for stolen children," Kim said. "There's no contract for that." He looked at the lantern, then at the door. "I want a lawyer." "You'll get one," I said. "You'll also get charges." We turned him to the wall on the building's side, the heater cutting in, the drip of melted frost tapping a metal pan. I crouched to the blanket blind and peeled the tape back slow so the lantern's cone didn't whip. Behind it, a pallet with flattened boxes, a moving blanket folded like a nest. A water jug with a Sharpie line and Thurs under it. An empty ramen cup. On the concrete, the rectangle of scrubbed floor like a scar. No child. But under the pallet lip, taped in the same frugal hand as the note in the bus, something flat. A manila envelope, thin as a promise. I slid it out. Inside, printouts dotted with copier snow, fuel card logs with $0 swipes, badge entries highlighted Vernon, a typed evaluation protocol 14 with a list of rooms and dates, a roster with initials, MK and CS among them. On the last page, a photo printed from a phone, a wire grid keyboard with 2 tags circled. C12, C11. In the margin, block letters, back door, 305. Do not shut light. E. Kim looked over my shoulder, breath a notch higher. "She's alive," she said, a verdict. "Or was 2 hours ago," I said, because my job is to walk between hope and evidence without letting either fall. We hauled Dan out. Patrol took him, bagged his knife, and read him rights by rote. He stared at the lantern as if it had failed to keep some secret. I circled the blind one more time. On the inside of the painter's tape, she'd written it again. Tight, almost cramped. "Call Wyatt." A phone number under it, the same as the card at Evelyn's. "Wyatt," I said into my phone, "E's leaving breadcrumbs and blue tape. We have logs and a protocol sheet." "I'm at the hospital door," he said. "Kid's lamp is on. Your nurse is made of iron." "Hold that door," I said. "We've got the bus and the driver. We've got Dan. We're going to need a place to put all this paper where it won't go missing." "My ranch office has a safe," he said. "But the courthouse will do. I'll call the clerk who doesn't fold." We flagged CSU to the bay. They moved quiet in the way of people who know noise wakes ghosts. Kim photographed the protocol sheet with her phone and texted it to herself, to me, to ASA intake, to a second account. Air-gapped not by tech, but by trust. "City Council is going to scream chain of custody," she said. "Let him," I said. "We'll show our work." Outside, the light was finally thinking about dawn, gray lifting off the lot. Ambulance taillights shrank down East Boulevard. Caroline's lamp rolling with her like a star relocated. The vendor, API, pinged Wyatt again. Pump 3 had stopped. The second yard's pump hadn't resumed. The machine that fed the machine was interrupted, and disruption never feels like triumph until you see who steps in the gap. Unit 12. Dispatch crackled, sharp with new energy. Hospital reports the city administrator is in the lobby demanding to see the child and threatening to call the mayor. Also, suspect Vernon's counsel has arrived. Hold them in the lobby, Kim said before I could. Security keeps a log. Record everything. The judge is on the bench in 30. We drove back with the heater losing ground and our tires chewing a morning that didn't yet deserve the name. In the H-Wing corridor, the lobby standoff had turned into a muted opera. Admin with a tight smile, counsel with a briefcase, security with polite bodies. Kim took position like a conductor and lifted a one-page score, the judge's fresh order. No transfer, she said. No entry. You can file whatever you like after 8. Vernon stood by the far wall with his lawyer, face blanked, as if the wipe-clean expression could change the lines already on paper. Brooke sat in the family room with a legal pad and a box of tissues that had become architecture. The parka man with FS had become quiet in a chair with 2 security guards reading their phones like a kindness. Renee stepped out, lamp cord under her palm. She looked like a person who'd spent a night keeping vigil and had not, in any way that mattered, become less. "Caroline's here," she said. She coughed through the ride but warmed quick. She won't let go of the lamp. Miles asked to see her when he's allowed. He's holding my stethoscope like a badge. "Let's get him a badge that doesn't beep," I said, and it came out a little rough. Wyatt folded his hat into his elbow. "Deputy," he said, a nod that had gravity. "When this is over, we're funding every lamp in this wing." "You're funding lawyers," Kim said dry, "and a forensic audit of procurement." "That too," he said. "We put Vernon in cuffs at 0807 when the judge said the word arrest on a line that would stand up in daylight." He offered the smile again, the one that had worked 100 times in rooms with carpet and coffee. It shrank on concrete. "This was a misunderstanding," he said for the record. "It was a plan," Kim said. "This is the misunderstanding ending." Renee took my sleeve, not tugging, just asking. "Miles wants to talk to the man with the lantern," she said, a small tilt of humor under a heavier thing. I went in. The room was warmer now, the kind of warm that skims, catches on gauze. Miles sat cross-legged under the lamp's circle, bandages clean, my camp lantern on the bedside table like a campfire at the end of a long mountain. He had an apple juice straw crushed between his teeth and his forehead unknotted a degree. "Hey," I said. He glanced up. "Is she afraid of the light?" he asked. "She was," I said. "We gave her one to carry." He nodded. Like that solved a math problem with only 2 numbers. His eyes slid to my pocket. "Do you still have it?" he asked. "The key." I tapped the evidence bag where it rested at my belt. "It's safe." He held out his bandaged hand, palm up like a kid asking for a shell at the seashore. "I want to see it." I sat and placed the bag in his hands. He weighed it like a coin, looked at the stamped letters through plastic, then at the wire clipboard of the IV pole, then back at me. "It doesn't like inside," he said, serious. "It needs a board." "We'll find it a board," I said. A soft knock and a face at the window. ASA Kim, question in her eyebrows. I stepped to her. "E?" I asked. She motioned me into the hall, lowered her voice. "We traced the number to a prepaid bought at a convenience store near the airport," she said. "One ping at 0558 by the Fleet Yard. Then nothing. But a nurse in ER just called. Woman at triage with a cut on her palm and a story that didn't make sense until I heard your voice. She asked for me by my first name. She said she told a nurse a week ago to hold papers for a cop who listens." I didn't breathe because breathing would have made the moment ordinary. "Evelyn?" "She says so," Kim said. "She's asking if her son is safe." Renee's eyes glossed quick and clear. Wyatt's mouth pressed thin and then softened. I looked back through the glass at the boy with the key and the lamp and thought of a wire grid board with empty tags, and of a hand that had written, "We will not shut the light," and then left ink like a path out. "Bring her," I said, and my voice didn't quite do what I asked it to. We set it up careful. Medical first. Questions later, the way you do when the body has had to be the witness because too many words got taken. We kept the overhead steady and rolled my lantern to the head of the bed like a homing beacon. When the door opened and she stepped in, a small woman in a borrowed hoodie with a line of gauze across her palm and eyes that had not slept, I saw a kid sit up straighter under a circle of light and lift the plastic bag with the key like an offering. "Mom," he said, voice breaking on the single syllable because that's how a dam starts to go. Evelyn took one breath, saw him, saw the lamp, saw the evidence bag, saw the nurse, saw the deputy, saw the rancher with his hat in his hands, saw the prosecutor at the door not making a show of it, and then she put her hand over the lantern's warm hood like she'd promised herself she'd do it once before she could die. "It stayed on," she whispered. "You kept it on." The first tear that broke in the room wasn't loud. It was a change in the air, like when the furnace cycles on and a house remembers it's a home. Evelyn kept one palm over the lantern's warm hood and the other on the rail. Miles kept both eyes on the light and then, inch by inch, let them climb to his mother's face. He looked older than 9 and younger than 5 in the same breath. The gauze around his fingers made his grip look careful when he lifted the evidence bag and set it in her lap. "Can I—" He stopped, swallowed. "Can we keep it on?" "We will," she said, and I believed her with the sort of belief that has nothing to do with data and everything to do with a person whose voice is more bone than sound. Renee was the first to move. She slid a chair into the circle as if chairs earn right of way. "Evelyn," she said, professional and soft, "I'm Renee. We can do the medical part one step at a time. Your hand first, your blood sugar next. After that, you and Miles can stay in this room together. No transfers. The court has ordered it." Evelyn nodded, tears catching at the corners like glass beads. "I left papers with you," she said. "I thought maybe if I—" It was all I had. Her eyes flicked to me. "You brought a lantern," she said, as if naming a plot twist she hadn't allowed herself to hope for. "I didn't know that would matter," I said. "I do now." Kim stepped halfway in. Legal spine straight, human glance gentle. "Evelyn, I'm Assistant State's Attorney Cho. Mr. Vernon has been arrested. A warrant's in play on his devices and office. 2 men tied to transport are in custody. We recovered a girl they tried to move last night. She's here and safe. You don't need to tell us anything until after your hand's treated and you've had water and food. When you're ready, we'll take your statement with a victim advocate present." Evelyn's shoulders shook once, the soundless kind. "I wrote it down," she said. "I kept writing it down. I thought the rules were that if you wrote it down and gave it to someone who didn't fold, the world had to move." "It did," Kim said. "It is." Wyatt lingered at the door, hat tucked under his arm, the lines at his eyes deepening. He didn't introduce himself. He nodded at Evelyn's hand bandage and said to Miles because some men remember how to talk to boys in rooms that feel too big. "Today, we're counting how long a light can stay on." Miles pressed his lips together, nodding like a person who has been given an assignment he likes. "We're good at counting," he said. He looked at Renee. "We count to 80 when the bulbs buzz. We count to 200 when they don't." "New math," she said. "We'll do it your way." Outside the door, City Council blustered another paragraph to security until Judge Coleman's clerk called the unit desk and read the no-transfer order like gospel. The building recalibrated. The lobby voices dropped to administrative muttering. The maintenance crew emerged from wherever they'd been sheltering from the storm of policy and brought a printed work order to H-Wing for a ballast inspection next week. Renee initialed the margin and circled next week twice. By 9, a court commissioner had given us what we needed to chase a day. Kim used one hand to sign a stack of motions and the other to hold a phone to her ear while the clerk stamped orders that sounded like normal words but meant a door stays shut. temporary protective injunction, seizure of records, search of devices, hold on fuel card accounts. Brooke sat with a victim advocate and handed over her phone, unlocking threads where evaluation meant leverage and Thursday meant a price. She cried once when she saw Caroline's initials on a roster that called kids units. Kim passed her a tissue and didn't say anything sanctimonious. A good prosecutor saves sermon for court and spends mercy in rooms with fluorescent tubes. At the depot, CSU finished their work on C12 and C11, and then a third cage, C9, where the false front of the brake pads hid nothing but an empty ramen carton and a torn corner of invoice paper with a drawn lamp and a cross-hatched square like a closet. Patrol put Dan and the driver through intake, collected their shoes, rolled their prints. The DVR mirrored to a thumb drive and a state server simultaneously so no one could accidentally spill coffee on it. A judge signed our warrant for Vernon's office. IT cracked his email. His inbox bloomed with the words Protocol 14, enough times to make a pattern a person could hold. Fuel card audits lit up like prairie towns from the air, a grid of $0 swipes at hours when buses sleep. Around 10, Wyatt called his operations guy and told him to assemble 3 cattle panels and a gate at a place I'd never expected to hear paired with those words, the depot's parts room. "We're not making a cage," he said, when Jared's face went prairie dog. "We're making a wall so no one can walk past those doors without knowing they open to a courthouse now. You can't just—" City Council started, but security was already bringing sawhorses and tape, and Kim, without raising her voice, said, "If your client wanted control of his workplace, he should have stayed lawful." And that was that. Around noon, the family room door cracked and a woman with a handheld mic from a local station asked if she could get a human face on this. She found nothing but backs as a nurse moved her along with a coffee and a look that said some stories weren't owed to daylight yet. The hospital's PR wrote a statement that used the word safety 5 times and never said kidnapping, because lawyers exist, and Kim wrote a second one that said forgery and arrest and in custody and court holds because law exists too. Wyatt said nothing to anyone with a camera. He returned calls from ranch hands and his foundation on a flip phone like a man who prefers fences you can fix with pliers to ones you fix with press releases. In H-Wing, warmth worked. Warmth and soup and apple slices and a nurse who could turn a monitor alarm off with a thumb before it decided to scare a child on principle. Caroline slept with the clamp lamp aimed at her shoulder because the circle on her body calmed her heartbeat by 6 points. Renee made a note. An OT came and offered crayons. Caroline drew a rectangle in slashes like rain, and, in the corner, a small circle with rays. "This goes here," she said, tapping the lamp. "Not off." The OT nodded as if a child had just named a planet. In the next room over, Miles and Evelyn took turns telling a story about a lighthouse we were all making up in real time so it would feel like a memory later. By 3, the judge took the bench. Kim presented a compact case, forged order with bad stamp, attempted interference at a hospital, access logs, bus seizure, recovered minor victim, mailer with protocol sheet, employee communications, badge data, fuel card anomalies, and, most damning, Vernon's own texts. C12 tonight. Eval OK. Brooke handles H. Vernon's lawyer argued about misunderstandings and jurisdiction. The judge asked no-nonsense questions about signatures and times. She set bond high enough to make ambition hiccup, signed a protective order barring contact with any unit, listed on a roster we'd pried from a manila envelope and ordered procurement systems seized for audit. She looked over the top of her readers at Brooke as if to say, "You can leave the door now," and Brooke nodded like someone who'd been waiting for permission to be brave. Late afternoon found me back at the depot with a small procession that made no sense on paper and perfect sense in a heart. Renee in street clothes because she'd been relieved and refused to leave, Evelyn with a clean bandage and a borrowed coat, Miles in a hospital hoodie with the IV out and a discharge titled "Return for Court," signed by a doctor with the tidy handwriting of people who believe in checklists, Wyatt with a rolled bulletin board under his arm, and Kim with a folder labeled Orders. That meant a deputy at the gate didn't even ask who we were. Jared held the door and kept saying, "I'm sorry," to the air. I told him the air could handle it. We walked to the parts room. CSU had finished. The cages stood open, their guts exposed, parts in front, shame behind. The cattle panels Wyatt had ordered made a temporary corral around the row with a sign a maintenance guy had stenciled between calls in case the world wanted to know where to stand. Court hold. No entry. Wyatt sat the rolled bulletin board against the wall and flicked the little tabs that catch the edge of cork. He handed me a Ziploc with pushpins someone had bought at a grocery store because supply was a problem, but pins weren't. "Where?" Miles asked, voice small and trying to be big. "Where you want," I said. He stepped to C12. The latch we'd opened with his key was locked now and tagged in red. He ran his bandaged fingers down the chain link, feeling the roughness like braille. He stopped at the right height, the shin-level line where someone's shoulders had polished the concrete with fear. He looked at the empty rectangle in front of the moving blanket, at the clamp light unplugged and bagged for evidence, at the taped water jug with Thurs written under a Sharpie line. He looked at Evelyn, then at Renee, then at the lamp in my hand, my camp lantern, which I'd brought to the depot like an idiot and a poet. I set it on the floor. Its circle touched his shoes, the gate, the clipboard we'd bagged, a map in light. Evelyn opened her palm. I put the evidence bag with the key in it in her hand. She turned it once like a person who knows weight and meaning are cousins. She didn't open it. She looked at her son. "You tell me," she said. He held out his hands. She broke the seal with her thumb and shook the key into his gauze. It made a small sound when it landed, the same sound it had made against the ambulance rail, a sound that would live under other sounds for a long time if we let it. Wyatt unrolled the bulletin board and leaned it where the wire grid had been in the photo. High, central, not hidden. He pinned a clean card at the top. Renee took a Sharpie from her pocket and, at Miles's nod, gave it to him. He printed with careful slowness, letters neat and uphill as if climbing mattered as much as spelling. I held the card steady, the way you hold the back of a child's bicycle when he decides to try something with balance in it. We hung the key through the card with a safety pin, the metal biting through cardstock and catching. The lantern through the smallest halo at the stamped letters. C12. A code, a cage, a room, a night. A boy in a wash bay holding still because someone had taught him to fear the way light breaks. In the corner, a maintenance guy cleared his throat and turned away quick. Jared rubbed at a spot on the floor that didn't need rubbing. Kim did not wipe at her eye because she is constitutionally incapable of doing anything that looks like a weakness in a place where city council might walk in. She just blinked twice and adjusted the folder that said Orders like it was a shield that worked. Evelyn put her hand over the lantern again, the benediction gesture now a habit. "Say it," she whispered. Miles was already writing, letters slow, the pencil point put to paper with the gravity of ceremony. He pinned what he'd written under the key. He stepped back, shoulder touching his mother's hip. Renee's knuckles still ringed white around the Sharpie cap because some things are hard even after you've done them. Wyatt shifted his hat in his hands. The lawyer, in Kim, folded her mouth into a line that for once had nothing to do with law. I lifted the lantern a hair so the words wouldn't shadow and read them with everyone else, and in the empty parts room of a city that had almost taught itself to look away, the message landed like a door locking in the right direction. Back to us.